I was actually prepared to make the presentation in Greek, but since a significant percentage of our audience is foreigner, I'm making English. The slides are already written in English, so I think we're fine. I'm Alexis Brezas.
Louder, please.
I'm a software engineer at Venture Geeks. Sorry, I forgot. I'm here to present you Endpoint, which is a framework for rapid web service development. This doesn't work. So as far as endpoint is concerned, web services, there are two types of web services. One is web clients, which are written in Backbone, Angular, React, or Embedded.js, or a similar JavaScript framework, which are our own written clients, and which connect to a web server which is written in endpoint, and they exchange messages in JSON or XML, and they receive data displayed on our website. And the second type of clients are third-party applications, which we expose to them our public data. Usually, such web services are written in the MVC architecture, which is written in something like this. Have you ever written in MVC pattern? Can you raise your hand? Okay, so most of you already know, and you're probably familiar with something like this. This is an example from PHP CodeIgniter. This is a very simple example. It works in a URL like /users/id. Let's see what it does. First, it does an input validation. It checks if you have passed the parameters it expects, and throws in the response 400 byte-based response if you forgot them. It fetches data from database. It does error handling, for example, if the user was not found, and then displays the response, the user in the appropriate format, probably JSON, for example. This is something that we have to write every time in every controller, in every action we want for our API. And even for such a very small and simple example, we have to write the same thing over and over. Input validation, fetching data, error handling, whatever other action we need, displaying the response. And this is repeated every time. And we didn't even write the model here, or routing, or whatever else we could have to write in this particular framework. Now, endpoint uses a different style. Our code is separated into two things, resources and scripts. We will see what those are. This is an example of a resource. It looks in a file like resources/articles.yml. It's written in the YAML format. Do you have used YAML before? Ruby on Rails usually uses it. And maybe some other things too. This is an example of articles. They will be in the articles/id on there. They will have properties like ID, which is an identity, a title, which is a string with some requirements, a certain length, and that will be unique, and a body, which is a text. when you have written that resource, automatically you have the following URLs working for you. They will be in a RESTful API accessible. If you send a GET request to /articles/ you will get a list of articles. You can also pass page number, the number of articles per page in a special variable with $ in front. And you can also order by a specific property. You can post 2 articles to create a new one. You can put your paths to update an article, get an article, delete it, or get metadata. This is a special URL which is created automatically for you as well. It's a like self-documenting method which will display you the properties and the methods you can use on that specific resource. Is everything clear? Until now, safety.
First off, can you move on that side so that you're in camera? Okay, that's it.
No. Sure, I didn't know. Okay.
This is a configuration file.
No, this is the list of URLs you can
Oh,
already
endpoints.
work when you have written the previous resource. These are URLs working for you automatically.
The final one, what the $, what's the role there?
It's just for special URLs to make it clear that you didn't write it yourself. Okay. And this is also used in the variables here. Will be used frequently. The $. This is an example request I'm making after creating that file with CURL. I don't know if it's visible to everyone due to the fonts being too small. I don't know. It's okay?
Yeah.
I send a post request with a specific content type. I can change it so that the response will be in a different format. I send that I want to type an article with a specific title and body to that /article/URL, and it responds with the article created. Automatically puts a value to create that and update that, and an ID which is auto-incremented. And here is a bad request, which has a too small title. Bad, it had to be at least 5 length. And it has an appropriate response with that 400 stage code, and the error which was what happened exactly in a human readable format. Now, you can also specify relations. This is something similar to what various active record or ORM frameworks use. I've used something like that, like an active record or relations seems familiar to you. Okay, some people don't know. Okay, so you specify here that this article has some comments, and that you have specified what that comment is in a different file. Each article has many comments, and that the article ID key of each comment means that this is a specific article that this comment belongs to. Okay? And when you add that to your file, automatically the previous URLs that I showed display the comments in every request. And also, these new URLs are created, so you can view the comments of that article in a specified format. You can add a comment to that article. You can delete some or all of the comments. Queries. Now, the previous URLs didn't have some, allow you to make custom queries which have extra data, different data from different tables, some different action that we want to use. So you can specify the queries in a SQL format inside your resource, and that will be accessible then here in that request. So that shows here why you have that $sign that you asked, Hans. You're not listening. Okay. So this is why I had a $sign, so that we don't. If you have a query which is called metadata for some reason, they are not confused. Is that clear?
No.
So if you had named your query metadata,
Oh, the queries are named. Right.
there will be no confusion here. So
Right.
you can have your own, it's like a namespace. Okay. Okay, so here I have a query which sorts your articles by the number of comments, and you can do that also specify throughout automatically auxiliary scripts. Now, resources are very specific format that you have to write them, and they don't allow you to make something custom or some specific script that you want to call, or for example, sending an email like this example. The framework cannot know that magically. You have to write it yourself. So, for example, here I require in a Node.js file the email library. You specify a hook that will be called on a specific event create, and you say that you want to send this email. You can also get data from a request parameter here, which says which data, which request created signal that event. So you can, for example, pass your own parameters and do something specific here. In scripts, you can make various different things. You can use that the Express API, get the application that's currently running here. You can specify routes. I don't know if you used Express. Have you used Express before? So I know that you're understanding. Okay. So you can specify your own custom routes here, and you can also use the Waterline API. Waterline is an ORM for Node.js. It has different adapters for Redis, MySQL, PostgreSQL, MongoDB, and you can use it here. So you can make a custom URL which does some specific query for yourself and then sends the response back. So what I'm trying to show here is that endpoint does not restrict you with what you can do. You can do whatever you want. You can use it like a normal Express application with a specific ORM ready for you, and it will work. Now, a bit for the philosophy behind this project is that on one hand you have declarative YAML files, which have a specific format, but they have very strong power in what you can say, very small amount of code, and then scripts that allow you to write something else custom that works only for your own web service. And these two allow you to write as less repetitive code as possible. So, for example, you don't have to write that input validation every time it works for you, but also allows you to do whatever different thing you want to do. This promise got future. This is what we will be doing, but these are not exactly ready yet. Hot code loading. This means that if you change your script file, you will not have to close the server and open it up again, which is something that is not very good when you're developing your project. And people familiar with PHP will be wondering why my code is not running now. It will do it automatically for you. There will be a plugin system so that you can have, for example, one basic plugin that we're building right now is the out plugin. This will allow you to have authentication for the user, for example, with basic authentication or the date plugin is allow you to do stuff like create that or update that I had previously, which are now implemented in the core, but they may be useful to be in a different external plugin. But the plugin system will also allow third people to add stuff to endpoint without having to interfere with the core. Also generators, which are also used in many frameworks like Rails or Sales, Node.js framework, to allow you to start a new project or install a plugin or generate your resources automatically, for example, by reading your database. So you don't want to have to write even the resource file yourself. These are commands within the command line. Questions?
I have a lot of questions. First off, I will start from back to front, from the latest. So first, latest question was, why do you bother with the hot code loading?
Why not? something that I like. I've seen Meteor.js, for example. It's pretty cool. Why not?
Apart from that, it's out of your scope, but it's.
You think that's out of my scope? Okay. This is something that I personally like. If it's too much trouble, I'm not interested.
No, I would see that as a different module. It's not that it's bad, but.
Not really. You have to design your framework behind that idea. For example, if you specify, if you have hooks somehow in the plugin system, that doesn't allow you to them to be reloaded again and again. You will have to close the whole server and start over.
So this will only help you during development, not in production, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea in production. So you can do some error during touching files or anything, and it will not change anything in production. Yeah.
Right, I have 3 more questions. I don't want to monopolize.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So in the script slide,
First one or
the last one, that one. I didn't understand how from endpoint we got Express. Is it included?
Yeah, that it gives you the Express application here with
So-
some extra information added to it.
Express is a dependency of endpoint.
Yeah.
If I already have it in my repository, is there some kind of conflict? No.
This is installed with npm, so it will handle that.
All right. All right. Can you go to relations? Just to the slide relations.
Okay.
So the resource comment, does that map to a file?
Yeah, it's on the resources as commented one.
All right. The capital C, is it? Does it expect a capital C file name?
No, it will automatically parse all the resources files, and it will see that there is this here. No, it would have to be comments, probably, like that articles there.
Oh, like that.
This is the name of your resource.
And the name of the resource at the top level should be the name of your file, right?
No, it doesn't have to be.
Oh.
So you can name it.
Oh, it just parses and
Yeah.
reads everything, right?
You can actually have many of them in the same file.
Okay. And yeah, that's all I want to.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I have 3 questions also. Can we go to the slide, the first script you showed us?
The first script.
The one with the hook.
Okay.
Okay. How do you specify here for what? For
How?
which
For
resource?
which resource this is? Yeah, this is my problem. I knew that I had to write which file this is, but I forgot. This was inside the script /articles.js. It will automatically know that this is for your
So combines the name articles
from the
dot
URL
YML.
and the yeah.
Okay.
It will not automatically open scripts which are not part of a resource, so that you can have your own includes there.
Mhm. Okay. I assume that there are many hooks on create,
Yeah,
upgrade,
create, before create, validation, before validation. So,
Can you go please? Can you please go to the slide with the query?
okay.
As I see, all the queries are named queries, named as in resource.
Yeah,
Endpoints.
the most
Slash article,
yeah,
slash
yeah,
most
here,
user.
here. Yeah.
So you cannot pass any parameters here.
Yeah, I didn't have it in the example. Yeah, you can pass your own parameters here,
Mhm.
and they will be with double colon, semicolon, what's that name? With 2 dots.
Colon.
Analytical column. Column.
The pagination, how does it happen here?
It adds them to the end of here.
You
You can disable that if you don't.
You configure the page size.
Yeah, it happens automatically. You can also change the page size. You can pass here per page.
And the last question, can you specify which fields you want to return in the
No, you will have to make your query return that here.
because you showed us with the relations that you told us that if I specify a relation comments,
Yeah.
if I ask for article /1,
It will return the comments also. Yeah.
also
If you
all
don't
the
do it
time.
here, it will not do it. You
All the
get
time.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you don't specify here, it will not be for you, really. Yeah. Something else? Some other questions? Yeah.
For which adapters, I mean, relational database adapters, is it supposed to?
Waterline works for MySQL, Postgre, Redis, Mongo, and you can see that these queries will not work for Redis and Mongo, of course.
Of course, yeah.
But you will have a different way of specifying queries in your scripts.
Okay, so it will incorporate the way they work.
Yeah.
I mean, in the sense of.
Yeah, you will be able to use Waterline or
Okay.
That was your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Something else? Okay, so you can also go to endpoint.js.com if you like the project and type your email, and if there's enough participation, we can probably make a mailing list and start talking there. And this is our GitHub repository. So, okay? Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Thanasis. I'm a freelance web developer. I'm going to do a small introduction into Node.js and how we offer web applications. This presentation is aimed towards people not fully accustomed with Node. So first we will start with the core concepts of why Node.js. The primary reason is because Node.js is asynchronous, it is event-based, so it's best suited for real-time applications. So, the better parts of Ruby is that it can do CRUD very well, all right, create, update, delete. Node.js will do real-time really well. So depending on your particular use case, choose your favorite weapon. So Node.js is also robust, and that means a couple of things. First off, it has reached a mature level, although it's still, the version is 0 point, which means 0 typically means beta. However, it's already rolled out in production environments like PayPal. Google uses it, and we know all sorts of large enrollments. So up to this point, all major childish, diseases have been eliminated, and it's a very stable platform. It's also robust because it can scale horizontally very easily. The stack required for Node.js is just Node, compared to, say, PHP, where you need an Apache server and the whole 9 yards. Node.js is very fast, and that's because at the heart of it is V8, which is a technology developed by Google with the sole purpose of making JavaScript fast. JavaScript runs in the browser. Google really understands how important it is to have fast browsing, so therefore dedicated a lot of resources into developing the V8 technology, and that technology is open source, and we took that open source and made it for the backend. Thus, we now have a blazingly fast backend system running on JavaScript. Another reason is that exactly that Node.js is JavaScript, and in combination with Browserify. For those of you that don't know, Browserify is a dependency management package for the front end, which enables us to manage our front-end application assets. So it levels the field between the backend and the frontend, and we do not need to change context when we shift from the backend to the frontend. So up to now, when we offer front-end applications, we typically either don't use a dependency system, so we just put out script tags in our document, in our index file, or we may use a dependency system like require.js, which I prefer to pull out my eyes first before I use it, unless somebody pays me. Okay. But then again, I discovered Browserify, and what I got out of it was that typically I'm a Node.js developer, okay? That's what I do as a profession. But discovering Browserify really helped me put some order into the maintainability of the code in terms of every developer knows what happens where. And it also will protect you from so many, pitfalls, right? Like in any other JavaScript dependency system, if you're not careful enough, you may expose variables to the global scope. Everybody knows that this is bad. Browserify, which uses the common JS dependency system that Node.js uses, will protect you from that, right? But that just is a small tip. The main gain here is that you don't need to change context, reboot your mind when you shift from backend to frontend code. Node.js has the largest growth year over year. I don't have the exact numbers. I've read the research, but it's like a twofold number, and it grows twice as fast as any other language right now. It's on its way in surpassing Ruby in packages published. So expect to see really revolutionary stuff in the coming months. And also it has the largest front-end toolkit, right? Because you don't do front-end if you don't have Node installed, all right? Node has all the linting modules, like for the styling of the JavaScript. It has all the building modules, like Grunt or Gal. It has all the compression modules, like Uglify. Every dependency system builds through Node, Browserify, require.js, every other build system here and there. So today you really cannot claim to be a front-end developer unless you have Node installed, not knowing how to offer Node, but using Node to build your front-end files. Node.js has a certain philosophy. It starts with, we don't have frameworks, although many people try to go against that philosophy, but up now, no framework has really prevailed, and that's, I believe, for good. As a community, Node.js prefers to do really small reusable libraries. So to give an example, when I met Alexis and he presented me endpoint, I was already offering a module that did exactly what he did, plus some other things. And automatically I discovered that Alexis' implementation was better because it didn't do the plus other things. All right, so we try to do the smallest possible reusable code and then add on top of it so that everything flags seamlessly and we can create our own custom constructs that fit our needs. Node.js has NPM. I believe NPM was one of the, if not the biggest reason for the Node.js success. It's the Node package manager. It enables anybody to publish a package, and then anybody can require that package. It's based on open source. It is open source, and it's extremely easy. It's extremely easy, and one would say, okay, nobody would say that. The comparison, I'm trying to draw very defensive. And of course, Node.js is based on open source. It is open source as a project. It has hundreds of thousands of open source modules. Anybody, for any kind of thing that you might imagine, the library exists. And because of NPM, if you at any point come up to a place where you don't find an open source project, you can very easily roll out your own, publish it, and then hear it. So let's take the 50K feet view for a typical Node web application. To that extent, Express.js has prevailed, but Express.js is not a framework. It's just a skeleton helper that will abstract away from you the rawness of core HTTP. Core HTTP is the core library of Node, as provided by Node. So Express.js is an open source project. You require it, you install it via npm. It's available in your project. You configure it, and then you consume the services and events provided by Express, and thus create your own web application. So some code, trying to keep it very simple. You require Express, and that's how dependency works in Node.js. You define a variable, and you require the package. The whole package then is available through this variable. You initialize the Express application, and from then on you configure it. Finally, you define the routes. Get here is an HTTP verb, things like get, post, delete, etc. You define the route, slash, meaning the index, and then you give a callback, right? The callback takes at least two arguments, which are the request and the response object. And then what you do with the response object, which contains all the methods that you need to send back to the client the information that you need, you just say hello world. When everything is set up, all you need to do is invoke the listen method with the port number that your web server you want to listen to. Now, from this slide here, this callback is called a middleware. And it's very important to understand what a middleware is. Every callback happening through the Express configuration is a middleware, right? Everything is a middleware. And the middleware consists typically of three parts. As I said, it's the request, the response object, and this one next is how to pass control. So the request object, along with the response, these objects instantiate on each separate request made by client, all right? So these objects, their lifespan endures from the moment the client makes a request. The Node.js server will instantiate the request object and the response object. It will pass it through middleware after middleware after middleware until the point where you send back a response. And that's the lifespan of the response and the request object. The request object carries all request information, everything that the client will provide, along with anything that the web server understands from the client, like what was the originating IP, all the header files, the cookies, what was the requested route, parameters, we're going to see that later. And it propagates information. A bullet that is missing here is that both the request and the response, but primarily the request object, are mutable objects. So you can define extra properties on it, no problem. And that's why we have propagation of information. We're going to see that in detail later in the slides. The response object, again, instantiates per request. I explained the lifetime of the response object before. It mostly carries methods rather than properties. So you have like response.render, response.send, some helpers like .json, where you send a JSON response. So it mostly consists of methods rather than properties. It can be built iteratively, meaning, as I said before, we have middleware after middleware after middleware, right? So one middleware may be responsive to add the course headers to the response, right? In order for course to work, you need to send back to the client the course headers. So this can happen in a specific middleware. And then the pass control, and then the other middleware may be responsible for deciding which HTTP code to send back. Like, would it be a 200 or a 501, 402, I don't know, depending on your case, your API. What to keep from here is that the response can be built iteratively rather than just on the final and last middleware. And response objects can also terminate a request. All these methods are to terminate a request. And when a request is terminated, no next invocation is required. All right? If you remember, next is for passing control to the next middleware. Now let's talk a little bit about next, which is the third argument of a middleware. The middleware has the request, response, and next. Next is for controlling the flow. Express depends on middleware arity to understand if your middleware is synchronous or asynchronous. Arity is the number of arguments that your callback has, all right? So if you define a middleware that has only two arguments, res, Express will assume that this middleware is synchronous and will just invoke the middleware, execute the code, and automatically move on to the next middleware. It will not wait for you to do a query. It will not wait for you to do any I/O operation. So this is very important to know. If your middleware is synchronous, you don't need the third argument. You don't need to have the next argument and code. When you invoke the next, you need to invoke it without any argument. If any truthy argument is passed, then that is considered as an error and will return a 501 error to the client. So you can then have hooks that will catch the error and I don't know, handle it better. But here you say no go, that's a truthy value, it's a string. When cast to boolean, that equates to true, that's to true. So this will result in the request failing. Invoke once and only once, that's for your own sanity. And if the middleware is terminal, you don't need to include it, right? We explained what terminal is in the previous slide. So if you invoke any of those methods like send, render, this is the terminal middleware. That's where the train stops and the response is sent back to the client. This is very important. Middleware sequence count. It matters. I cannot describe the hours of frustration looking for why it doesn't work. It doesn't work because you didn't put the middleware in the right order. And this is so important because What we do here, express.static. Static is a helper of Express that will serve static assets, all right? Like our JavaScript files, images, fonts, whatever. We put them all under a folder, and then we configure the Express saying that the static folder is public. So if the client makes a request for the fav icon, and the fav icon is located under that folder, it will locate it and automatically serve it without going anywhere else down that line. So the static also is a terminal method. If the file is found, if the file requested is found within the static folder, execution stops right there and then. That means that it will not go to the next middleware where we have the logger, all right? The logger, the job of the logger is to log, like what time, what IP requested what. So what we want to do here is that we don't want to log access on static files. Now, a common pitfall would be that you have a file name here in the static folder that conflicts with an API endpoint that you have named, and you expect to get the API endpoint, but instead you get served the static file. So you understand how easy it is to get crazy with that. What I'm trying to illustrate here with the word use, and we will look a little bit deeper on that in the slides after that, is that once res send is called, that's a terminal action. All right? No matter what we define afterwards, it will just never get called. So sequence matters, really respect it, and really understand that rule, because the larger your application grows, the more modules, the more files your Express.js application will get configured in, so that can get a little heavy. Now, working with middleware. This is what I talked to you about, the request that we can mutate it, we can augment it, actually. So, we define a middleware at some point, rec res next, as we explained. And what we do here is that, we get the ID of the cookie, right? Rec.cookies is where we can access the cookies of the client, whatever if they're available. And if we name a cookie ID, then that's how we access the cookie named ID. This is an asynchronous function, all right? This takes time. This needs to talk to the ready server, wait for the ready server to make the query, and wait for the response. When the response comes back, that's when this callback gets invoked, all right? It gets invoked, and it provides us with two arguments, with an error and the result. That's a typical Node.js callback, where the first argument is always the error argument. If it has any value, then we know that the operation failed. So that's why we have this if here. If error is truthy, we don't care about the type, we don't care whatever. As long as it's truthy, as long as it evaluates the true, we need to bail out. There has been an operation error. And thus the return here stops the execution of our closure right there and then. If everything goes well, what we can do is that we can take the result, which presumably is the user data object, what I like to call the UDO, and we assign it back to a property in the request object. And then we pass control. Next. Now, mind you, this is just for showcasing how it should happen. You never need to do that because that's already done by open source modules for you, right? But I'm just trying to explain how the flow works. How do we leverage recommendation? So think about that. This middleware is somewhere high up, and below it, we define this middleware, where some user needs to get the profile, all right, so that I can upload my photograph, edit my name, etc. Again, we see it's a typical middleware with the request, the response, and the next. And what this middleware does is not serve the profile resource. Its job is only to ensure that the client has the correct credentials to access the resource, right? So what we do is very simple. We just check if user is truthy. So if to that point, if result came back now from the ready server, then we assign a null value to the user. A null value would evaluate to false. All right? So what we say here is that, you know what, if you are not a registered user, you will get a 401 and no go. But if everything is okay, then we do a next. So you see, this middleware doesn't touch either the request or the response object. It only just, its job is merely to see that you are authenticated. And you would name that function, you would name it, is out, and then you would protect all your routes with that single middleware, reusing it in every route. Now here's a list of expressly maintained middleware. You have the body parser. The body parser's job is to parse post requests or queries in a GET request and expose them as properties in the request object. Compression, if you don't have a request proxy in front of you. The cookie parser. The cookie parser is required so that the ref cookies ID would work, otherwise it wouldn't. Because the cookie parser would parse your cookies and then propagate them under that property, the cookies. CSRF middleware, and error handler, and session management. Session management, and then you need to go on and configure also the session management and say, you know what, your storage is on memory, or it's on Redis, or Memcached, or whatever. Here's the link where you can find all of these. The presentation is already online, you can check it out. So let's talk a little bit about routing. These are the HTTP verbs. They're not all of them. I'm just trying to illustrate how Express works. As you can see, up to now we used the use keyword. Use doesn't care for a route. It only gets a callback. So naturally it catches all. Right? So once you say app.use and a middleware, that middleware will get invoked in each and every request made to the server. The same will happen with all, but all refers to all HTTP verbs. So I don't care if it's a get, it's a put, or a post. As long as that route is satisfied, then invoke the middleware. And from then on, I think you understand, depending on the HTTP verb and the route, that's a condition to invoke the middleware. So, analyzing how the syntax of the route is made. The route is either a string or a regular expression. And then we can either have a single function, which is a middleware, or an array of functions, or as many arguments as functions as we like. So all of these formats are valid. Depending on your use case, you may want to use each and every one of them. So there are cases where you may dynamically need to add middleware. That's where you would create an array and push to that array the middleware that you need dynamically, and then use that array here. Or you may use the comma values, anything that serves your purpose. There's no single way of doing that. Here is how you can express the routes. As we said, you can express them as a regular expression. And if your regular expression has groups, like this is a group. Well, there was a new line here anyway. You understand? Suppose that this is a regular expression and a single line. This is a group, right? It has a parenthesis, the word, and the plus sign. So any word character, that group would propagate into the params property of the request, and it would be the params would be an array, and that would be the index 0. All right. So that route would trigger on that request, and the group 0 would equate to that part of the route. You can have a route as a plain string. You can have a route with parameters, and you can have a route with multiple parameters. Parameters are defined using a colon and a name. That is a named value that you can access through the params property of the request. You can see the examples here. I don't need to go through them. Everybody can see? All right. And you have you can use star to catch all. So catches all routes under API. That's the kind of route you would use to blanket your API with an authentication middleware. All right. Now, routing best practices. Routing is where the buck stops at. That means that from all the sequence of your middleware, routing is at the bottom. It's best if you decouple the routes from your core application. That means don't have them in the same file. So if one file you have the configuration of your application, all your middleware, cores, body partial, I don't know, then require the routes module in another file and pass it the reference of the express, so that the routes file will take control and start defining the routes. Will make for much cleaner and maintainable code. It's worth the effort to study the app-route pattern. It's documented. If you download the presentation, this is actually a link that you can press on and study. And at the end, it can only be a 404. All right? If each and every route has been tested and no route has been elected to serve the request, at the end, you need to send a 404 because that's what actually has happened. Last thing is the views. Rendering a view is pretty straightforward. You just call render. Render will actually serve an HTML file back to the client. And by saying render index, that means that there is a file named index.j, because we're using the J renderer. We're going to see afterwards all our options. And then we pass variables as an object. And these properties of the object are available within our template here. This is the template. So we have an H1, a P welcome to, that would be SKGNode. This is how you define paths in the viewing engine. So this would happen at the very top of your Express configuration. You said that the views will be available at that specific directory. This is a nice little snippet that what it does is the path is a core Node.js module. It provides helper functions to work with paths. So naturally, it has a method that says join. You can all imagine what it does. It concatenates two paths. And one path is the view, and the first path is the dir name. That's also a magic keyword in Node that corresponds to the current directory where the file is located. And then we set the view engine. We set it to J. And you can check out all available engines through this URL.
Can you use different template engines in the same application per route if you want to?
No.
You only use
I think you can specify it somewhere.
or
No?
Is it simultaneously to have more than one template?
More than one template in the same
The same application?
Template engine in the
Okay.
same application. Yeah, I think you
Template
can.
engine.
Yes, template engine.
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah, you can pass it as a third parameter. No?
I don't know if render accepts a third parameter. that-
Something like that.
Maybe, but it's very hacky and I wouldn't do it. Why would you do that?
Maybe you want
Legacy.
to have
Yeah, something like that.
no. Maybe you want to have different preprocessors for the templates. Maybe.
Why would you do that? You raise.
If you take no, you can take, for example, partials written in J, but you might be writing your templates in echo, for example. But
You might-
someone else.
Yeah, you might elect to use equal, and then you can render runtime the Jade parts. But you don't have to define Jade as an engine in Express.
And one more question. What is the best practice to set to organize the files, the routes?
That would be the next presentation.
Okay.
that was originally our idea, and then a friend of mine asked me, you know what, I need to get into Node and I have to ask you some questions. And the kind of questions that he asked from this presentation, because our original idea was we would show you folder structure, how to format your modules, but we had to take that step first. I mean, it makes sense, right? Anybody else? Yes, Gary. Stefan.
I'm not the ideal, but anyway. So as far as I understand, those middleware stuff, we're basically working on some, let's say, global context, right?
No global context. There is no global context.
And what's the context they're working on then? Because as I understand that, you tell that middleware, take that context, do whatever stuff you want to do in that context, and give it back. And I would transfer that to some next middleware, right?
So the context can be inferred, but the context is not the right word, by using direct res, all right, which are the objects that are instantiated per request. All right, so that's the context, but we don't use context because context has a very special meaning in JavaScript. That's, let's say, to know on which request you are talking to. If
Well,
that
of
was
course.
the question.
Of course, the word global was an overstatement. It's not exactly global, right? But they all work, or they try to work on some unique context. That's the request of the web, right? Because in the example you saw, where you said augmenting, so that's a nice way to say I'm altering the request. But
Right. Yeah, it's an object. It's an object literal. It's nothing more. It's nothing special. It's like I don't know, like starting and closing that one, that dash, bracket, and that's an object literal in JavaScript. All right.
What I'm trying to get to is that that request object, for example, it might pass through 100 middleware.
Yeah. Countless. Yeah.
So I guess in the real life application, that got to be tough to follow somehow, right?
We don't care to follow it. It's, imagine it like you're dropping the ball, and depending on its ball follows a unique path. So the more complex your application is, depending on the resource requested, a unique path is followed. If you have a signed-in user and you discover that, then go through all those middleware. If not, go through all those middleware. If he's requesting an API, go through those middleware. If he's requesting a JSON response, another thing. So it's not just, you define a single path. You define all the possible paths, and you don't care.
So that's a program. Really. That's what every program does. Right?
Right.
We define
Yeah,
the paths.
exactly.
The CPU will work.
Nothing.
But I'm not trying to say if it's good or bad. Right? I'm trying to understand if it's tricky in real life or not to follow.
No, these are more advanced issues that we're going to discuss at later presentations, and it's about how you architect your application and you structure your folders and your modules so that you know where the responsibility lies depending on the resource requested.
But it's true that you may have some middleware like Passport or some else that creates something like that .user.
Yes,
And you have
that's done by Passport. Yeah.
and you don't know if your different middleware use the same property of request, for example.
I don't understand.
If you have Passport and some other middleware that also uses .user, there will be a conflict that you don't know.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's something that I think.
Put in your hands and pull your outs out. I mean, yeah, user is something you shouldn't touch. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, but some middleware do that, and you may create your own middleware that does it as well.
Right, yeah. Each and every middleware, either you are authoring it on your own, or you are requiring it as an external package. You should know what it does to your code, right? We should know that the Passport library that we all use for authentication propagates to the user property. We know that for a fact, and we wouldn't go on to create a conflict as long as we are sane, right? Now, the trick here might be to propagate that information to your team, but that's exactly the same kind of problems that anybody has in terms of conflicting and how you distribute the information within.
Yeah, but they kind of use the same namespace, so you have a problem there.
Be careful. You're a fucking programmer. Questions? Harris?
Again,
Again.
I'm trying to troll you.
All right.
As I see, you write an application in a specific way. Okay. For Express to take your routes, and so why did you say that this is not a framework? It is a framework, but it's a lightweight one.
It isn't a framework because a framework would provide you all of the facilities. It would give you an active record, it would give you a logging facility, it would give you...
Well, not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that discussion of what is a framework. Right
It's
now,
a lightweight
but,
framework.
It's
generally accepted that Express is a lightweight
Yes, I understand.
kind of thing.
But from the point that you are not architecting your application on your
But
own.
you are, actually.
You are hooking into Express.
Yeah,
Not yet.
as you can see here, there are so many ways, and
Yes, but you are hooking into Express with app.get. So
right,
Express.js calls your
right,
callback.
yes,
From that standpoint of view,
yeah.
it can be called a lightweight.
Either it's Express or it's the core HTTP, somebody calls it. So
You can't really call it a framework because it handles only that part, that HTTP part.
Okay, Sinatra does the same. We
For
call
example, it doesn't render the views. It renders the views.
it renders, it has rendering.
Oh, it's that.
Where were you? We had views here, it was a big slide.
Yeah, but it wasn't really clear that that was Express.
Oh, it is Express. What is Express?
Then how is
All right, how is that?
So there will be a next presentation about
How to structure
How to
your...
structure, yeah.
About how it is not.
You make one question.
no. I'm sorry.
I think we're back in time and we have to rush.
Yeah, where is the fourth parameter?
Fourth,
Fourth. Next, and
third.
fourth.
1, 2, 3.
And the fourth,
What fourth, man?
the error. Where were you?
What are you talking about?
Express, they have the fourth one now. Error. You don't have it.
Where? Here in the middleware?
You didn't explain it at all, I think.
Yeah.
We discussed it afterwards.
People have questions.
Don't confuse me. All right, that's all with Express. Παρακαλώ συνδιοργανωτής να... Ποιος είναι ο συνδιοργανωτής?
Δεν ήσουν εσύ.
Με me.
Σε παίρνει η κάμερα σωστά.
Ναι, το κίνηση.
Έτσι, αυτό το άλλο.
Και ένα ποτήρι μπύρα δίπλα. Κοίτα.
Everybody set up? Alright. So everything I'm going to show you is already documented in a GitHub repository that I have posted through Twitter. You can check out the hashtag and you can find the URL of where we are now. If you can remember, it's GitHub my username and /practice. From there you can find the Heroku document. So what you need to understand is that Heroku, because of its architecture, will launch each separate instance with a different listening port. And that listening port is propagated through the environment variable named port. That's why you need to define the port number using that snippet here. So we're just going to copy paste that. And what I have here is default web application scaffolding that the Express application does. I can easily replicate that. Let me show you. If I type Express go, it will automatically create a folder with all the scaffolding that requires the package.json, the app.js, etc., etc. So the file where we define the port is here, based on the scaffolding. What we're going to do is paste what we read from the document. We now have the port in this variable, and we set the port to be what the port value is. All right? So that's done. And if we run the web server locally, we can access it here, and it's welcome to Express. It works. What we need to do now is create our Heroku application. It's better to do it through the Heroku Manage panel. or you can do it from the command line. I prefer to do it from the panel. So here we are at the Heroku dashboard. There's a link, create a new application. We can name it, I don't know, SKGNode. We can select a region. And that's it. The application is now created. We have the GitHub URL. Oh, it's a Git URL, sorry. And we copy it. And we realize that our folder here is not a GitHub repository, so that can be easily amended.
It's just Git.
All right. And I'm going to add the Heroku repository as a remote named Heroku. Okay? So typically I would have my origin pointing at GitHub or whatever our main repository is. And then we would create a remote named Heroku. So here's a screenshot of what we saw right here. Okay? And we click Finish Up. From here on, we can add add-ons, but that's beyond our scope. We can check it out later. You add the repository. And what we need to do is we need to tell Heroku what to do once we deploy. And we do that using the special file, proc file. So I'm going to create that file, and what I need to do there is just copy-paste that line. So for the web service, all you need to do is launch Node, but our application doesn't launch with dot, it launches with .bin www because that's the way it is. And depending on your specific use case, that may change. So what I need to do now, as you can see, it's dirty. I need to add it. And I'm pretty much ready to deploy. So what I'm going to do is push to Heroku. Now a process starts in Heroku that automatically reads our dependencies, installs them, and performs the deploy. As you saw, the only thing that I did was just push, and automatically it will deploy, and it's already there. Now, one thing that I need to do, one and only once per project, is to scale up the dynos to 1, because by default they are 0. And what I'll have to do is watch the log file. What I'm seeing here is the console from Heroku. And if I go to my Heroku SKGNode application and I press on that button, I can see my Express application launched. That was it, guys. Yeah. It's not simple, and it really costs nothing. It costs nothing up to a very high volume of traffic.
Where it starts to cost
for our standards. But at the point where it starts to actually cost money, then it'll be, yeah, you would find it more profiting to go to AWS or another solution. But for websites like, you know, to test or to learn, or community sites, you don't need to do anything. The invoices come every month with zero value, $0 charge.
That's just one line then.
Just one dyno that has.
One lot more, you have to pay.
Yeah, but why would you add more since you don't have that traffic?
Yeah.
There is a handicap that the dyno dies off after 30 minutes, 1 hour of activity. While there are ways to circumvent that, you're not advised to do that because it's cheating and abusing of a service that's provided free to you. So if you want the application to be always on so that you would eliminate the response time, pay. Questions?
How much traffic can you have free out?
It's not about traffic, it's about dyno hours. I think it's up to 4 or 40, something like that. You can read the documentation.
700 is per month, the free thing. If you scale, you go to 350, and after you go start paying.
Per app, per month.
700 hours.
Which is basically 24 hours a day.
But
Which is basically 24 hours a day, as far as I know.
yeah, but imagine that your application is get to sleep after 1 hour of inactivity, so
From
you
my
never
experience,
arrive at this.
You never know.
I'm running a site that gets about 100 visits per day, every day, and it's still free, in the free zone. It's not very heavy on the back end though, but... Guys?
I think it's slightly larger, 750, because they give you the opportunity to use another dyno just to SSH live into it. Let's say you have some Valve tasks to run. You can run it, and they do not charge you because
Like a worker.
yes, like a worker.
Yes.
Not no worker, one of workers.
One of.
One of us. Just for example, to migrate your database or something. So if you they give you 700 and something just for this, because for the most of the part, this kind of task will be one time task and very short in time.
Right.
But that's a totally different application. You need to specify that in the profile. As a worker.
Not as a worker, but as one of they spin up one of workers just to
do that job.
run the Gallup tasks or
Okay,
tasks.
okay.
Yeah, I saw when you did the push, someone ran the npm install. So someone installed the dependencies, whether it's Heroku or some other facility in the app.
Heroku, they have a hook.
All right.
So they do the regular process that you would do in your computer. You will install the dependencies, and check everything, and they are doing it for you.
And does that mean that they will actually do that again next time you push?
Yeah, every time you put it happens the same process.
There's a kind of caching mechanism that it avoids that. If you are having a large volume of dependencies,
You mean if they are already installed?
Sorry?
If they are already
you see,
installed.
I just did a new deployment,
All right, yeah.
and it didn't do the npm install like the other time, right?
All right.
Yeah, very close.
Yeah. So you see here, it's hello Stefan, it's
Hello to you too.
live.
They have a post-install script if you want to override the deployment procedure.
And you can go crazy. You can create your own Slack. The Slack compilation is the, let's say the correct name, remember? You can create your own script that deploys.
All right.
Build pack, right? Your own build pack.
But basically, in this case, I was just interested to see if that was Heroku or something in our app that did that. But if it's Heroku.
Yeah, and this also makes for speedy deployments, right? Because this app had only like, I don't know, 6 dependencies. In a typical case, you'd have, no, that's a Node.js project. All right, all the 6.
Some of them are. Yeah, there are some of their dependencies.
Those take time, and each one of them has its own dependencies, so.
And since Heroku is basically for not production stuff, as far as I understand.
The first step.
The first step, right. So just for playing ground, we don't really care if they will reinstall it or not.
Yeah.
Right.
You can use it on production if you want.
You just need to scale
Yeah,
and
this
pay
is a
time.
production side for me, and I'm still in the free zone. This is a production session.
Okay, you can avoid even the sleep, you know, the 60-minute sleep. You can put schedulers, but there is a but.
But it's a
What
thing.
does it mean if it sleeps? Does it take some time?
It takes some time to
It
wake
takes some
up.
time to
you know.
wake up.
Which it's you cannot.
Okay,
2-3 seconds.
if you want to serve something, it may take 3, may take 8, and after that, the next request is going to take 1 minute. It's going to be very quick. But for the first hit, that's a problem.
What about database?
They have free. You can go Mongo, you can put a MySQL one. You just need to hear all the time the connection because it drops. After 2 milliseconds, it drops.
Yeah, these are the add-ons. Here are the data stores that you have. They are mostly SaaS services. Heroku in itself provides the Heroku Postgres, and that's about it. Everything else is SaaS based. So let's go, MongoLab, MongoHQ, pick your flavor.
As I said, Heroku Postgres gives you the free
Tier.
tier, gives you 9,000 rows. After that, you pay
10,000.
10,000. Okay. And then you pay $9.80.
Which is $9 per month for 10 million.
And then it goes by the size in gigabytes.
Yeah, that's the extra feature.
Yeah, as you grow,
You can go crazy here.
as you go, you will reach to some point where the costs outweigh the benefits. 6,000, yeah, I don't know. Is that you?
Some good guy.
Yeah, where it would be to your benefit to go to a self-hosted solution, using UPS or something.
But you need to manage it. But you will need to manage that yourself.
Yeah, the costs of managing it are less than the costs of paying Heroku. That's a balance where it's as you grow, you know it for yourself. All right? Yeah. Let's go for this, guys.
Thank you.
Enterprise firma. MySQL δεν νομίζω μας κάνουν καν. Είναι και άκρες.
Ήθελα να πάμε στη Τσέχη ή να πάμε να ταμώσουμε τους πειρατές.
Τους πειρατές.
Έχεις κάτι εσύ και φαγώθηκες.
Το Jack Sparrow.
Είναι η πέμπτη φορά μας.